Hello, everyone. Welcome to the fourth annual panel, Thomas E. Lovejoy, Ph.D., and Edward Wilson, Ph.D., this year titled Rooted in Resilience, Harnessing Nature for Climate Resilience. I am Mauricio Diaz-Granados, Chief Science Officer and Dean of Science here at the New York Botanical Garden, and I am absolutely delighted to be in this panel with four incredible experts, each with enormous contributions to science, society, and nature. It's wonderful to see you, this auditorium full of people who are concerned and committed to have a better planet and to know how we can harness nature for climate resilience. In my previous job at the Royal Botanic Gardens Kew, I led the Nature-Based Solutions Initiative, but even before 25 years ago, I was eager to save the world by planting trees in my home country, Colombia. And with one of the panelists, that I won't tell you the name, you will have to guess, we would identify degraded places near our hometown, and we would bring hundreds of students to plant thousands of trees. We had read a few books on ecological restoration, and we thought that was good enough. Obviously, now we know that it's not enough, that you need a career, you need a degree in ecological restoration. So intention is good, but not sufficient. The reality is that ecological restoration and conservation, when done well, are proven strategies for strengthening both climate adaptation and mitigation. Restore ecosystems can stabilize carbon stocks, safeguard biodiversity, and protect communities to climate-related shocks. But the pace of degradation continues to outstrip current efforts. The scale and pace of these efforts still fall short of what is needed to effectively address global environmental challenges. The need now is to scale up these solutions very quickly enough to meet the urgency of the climate and biodiversity crisis, and as we saw before, to turn the tipping point of critical biomes such as the Amazon forest. This panel will examine how restoration and conservation can be advanced as central pillars of climate action. We are here to explore how plant-based solutions can drive climate resilience through science, finance, implementation, and community engagement to maximize impact at regional and global scales. All right, so let's start. First, my dear panelists, I would like to invite you to briefly introduce yourselves, your roles, and how your roles connect to the panel theme. So we can start here. Susan?
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today to give us a chance to share some of what we know with you, and we look forward to learning from you all as well. I'm Dr. Susan Cook-Patton. I'm a lead reforestation scientist at the Nature Conservancy, and I've spent the last 9 years basically of my job trying to figure out how much climate mitigation we can get from putting trees back into the land, and how that varies depending on where you are in the world and what you're doing, and then put all that information into tools for decision makers to help people make faster and more robust decisions about how to best manage the land for climate mitigation.
Good morning. Thank you, Mauricio, for inviting me to participate in this great panel and the audience for coming to listen to us. I am Maria Uriarte. I'm a tropical forest ecology. I'm a professor and chair of the Department of Ecology and Evolution at Columbia University, not very far from here. And I have worked my entire life in trying to understand the pathways of recovery of forest, both after people stop using the land for agriculture and after extreme climate events, with a focus on hurricanes and fire. And more recently working in Peru after the devastating 2024 fires that our speaker spoke about. And I am interested, of course, in trying to make sure that this regeneration, natural regeneration happens. And I work in the ecological part of it, but also in trying to help planning these efforts. So thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you. Mauricio, thanks to you. Thanks to the New York Botanical Garden to invite me. I'm Wilson Ramirez. I live in Colombia, and I'm working with the Humboldt Institute. Christian, our first director, warm regards. And I work with nature-based solutions. I am the manager of a big group of 40 people, more or less. They are working with several issues related with restoration, where, well, I'm leading the group of restoration. They're working with urban landscapes and the solutions into this urban context in Latin America especially. We are working together in biodiversities. We are going to explain it later. And we're working with new forms or new ways to preserve or conserve in Colombia in complement with the National Parks Office. So great to be here, nice invitation, so thank you.
Good morning. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much to the New York Botanical Garden for inviting me, representing CAF, to participate in this panel. We feel very excited. I'm Alicia Montalvo. I'm the manager of Climate Action and Positive Biodiversity in the Development Bank of Latin America and the Caribbean, which is a regional development bank working in 24 countries in South America and the Caribbean. I feel a little bit ashamed because I'm an economist and I'm impressed, but I have been working in environmental economics for several years, and I have a background also in climate change. Now in the bank, we are really very committed to work with biodiversity. This is very important for us, to work in nature-based solutions and to give value to the ecosystems. We think this is crucial for the future, so we feel very proud of being here, and I hope I can provide the point of view of a bank, which usually is quite useful. not my opinion, but the bank.
Thank you very much. So the first round is going to be about setting the stage. I would like to ask you generally, I'll go one by one, but why plant-based solutions matter? So I would like to start with Maria. Maria, you've done a huge amount of work in tropical forests, in the Amazon, in the Andes. What do you see as the most promising plant-based strategies for climate resilience?
In my opinion, the most promising strategy is assisted natural regeneration. Forests, after people stop using the land for agriculture, or for those of you who live in New York and have a place upstate, if you stop mowing your lawn, forests will come back. In these highly productive forests, the recovery happens naturally, very fast. They provide biodiversity, they sequester carbon, and it's by far the most cheap option to do this. There was a recent study that estimated 215 million hectares of area that could be used for restoration. The challenge is to identify which areas are best given the existing pressures on the land, and also the likelihood of permanence, something that my colleague Susan works on. So yes, forests are restored, but do they stay restored? And the second point that probably you wouldn't associate with me is that I think urban forests are incredibly important. More than half the people in the world live in cities, and it's important that they understand the value of forests, what it does in terms of cooling the climate, in terms of providing space to relax, well-being, health, and so forth. So we have this example here in New York City. I don't know how survivable New York would be without its parks. And there's many other examples in the world. So I think that those two, and then of course, agroforestry systems, which is a mix of native species with trees that provide some sort of either sustainable supply chain or payments for ecosystem services, so that communities can depend on these forests.
Thank you, Maria. Yes, the urban dimension is definitely important, and hopefully we can talk a little bit more about that. To Susan, you've quantified the global climate potential of restoration. When are we today in realizing that potential, and what's missing? What's next?
Thank you. And this question actually gives me a great chance to respond to yours, which is just to remember that forests can grow themselves. I think everybody really loves to plant trees. I love to plant trees, but we don't have enough time, people, seedlings to plant at the scale that we need to achieve the promise that reforestation and other natural climate solutions bring us, where there are places, if there's sufficient seed sources, you're next to existing forests, the seeds can come in or get pooped in by the animal flying over, that the forest can come back on its own. So we do really need to leverage natural regeneration as much as possible. A lot of my work is about mapping the potential for reforestation, and the first maps were sort of big and general and based on fairly simple assumptions. It's like, could a forest grow there? Yes. Is it not cropland or urban space where we need to keep the land for human land use? And does it not have trees? Great, that's a reforestation opportunity. And you get big numbers like 678 million hectares. But that's about twice the size of India, I think. Nobody sort of wakes up and thinks, I'm gonna plant trees or regrow trees across a very large area. It's these parcel by parcel places that you talked about right in front of your yard. So we're getting closer at really pinpointing the places where you can achieve the best benefits for carbon, for biodiversity, for people, to try to accelerate the action and focus on those locations. But we still need to do a lot of work to really have the conversations with the local communities, figure out, do they want trees there? How do we best get them the trees that they want in the landscape? So it is the time to switch from ambition to action, and there is a lot of movement on the ground, but we definitely need more.
Got it. A good one. So Alicia, conservation without finance becomes conversation. That's why you're here. So CAF, the Development Bank of Latin America and the Caribbean, has been at the forefront of financing biodiversity-positive climate action in Latin America. From a development finance perspective, what are the biggest barriers you see to channeling large-scale investments into these nature-based solutions?
Thank you very much. I think that the main barrier is that there are many conversations and sometimes it's very difficult to really identify very specific actions. I would say that finance is an important barrier, but it's not because there is no finance, but because it's very difficult to translate sometimes the biodiversity language and botanic language into financial considerations. That's why in CAF we are working, as you well know, thank you very much, Mauricio, because you are always with us. We are working to bring the science into the finance conversations in our institutions. We have created one scientific committee that could inform all our projects to make sure that we are aligned with science, but also we are working with the private sector and technology. We think then that the main barrier is how to bring all these actors together and to make possible that the finance goes in the right direction. We have made a commitment to devote 40% of our investments to green actions, but the most important thing is that we have committed that 10% of our actions will be devoted to biodiversity. And this is very difficult. Even though there are many needs, it's very difficult to translate these needs in investments that could be considered by the ministers of finance, who are our shareholders. So we need really to build this knowledge, how to make sure that all the institutions understand that investing in biodiversity is very productive. We are talking about agriculture, we are talking about protection against the climate change impact, we are talking about water, but sometimes it's very difficult to really bring these ideas into the investment decision tables. So I think that this is the main challenge. That's why maybe I can say that now we are making many commitments with different institutions, and particularly with the New York Botanical Garden. We feel very happy. We just adopted one technical cooperation to work with you. And then you can help us to develop taxonomies, to develop knowledge that we can share with the Latin American and Caribbean countries and make the institutions understand that investing in biodiversity will bring many benefits. As we have heard from Professor Nobre before, it was impressive, the presentation. So we think that this is perhaps a challenge, not a lack of finance, but how to make that this finance goes in the right direction.
Thank you, Alicia. And Wilson, Colombia is one of the world's biodiversity powerhouses, such as Brazil as well. Why are plant-based solutions particularly powerful in your national context? Both, I would say, in natural ecosystems, but also in the urban dimensions.
Thank you, Mauricio. And well, I'm working at Humboldt Institute, that it's a kind of interface between decision-making and science. And we're struggling a lot trying to communicate the role and the usefulness of the nature-based solutions to the decision makers. I think that at this moment we have the opportunity to have the diversity, the biological diversity in our countries, so several ecosystems and so many different plants. And we are implementing a lot of what we call nature-based solutions. We are counting more than 400 at this moment from our observatory of MBS in Colombia. But I think that the impact is really low at this moment, especially at the urban context, because so many times the mayor or the people who is making the final decision, as you mentioned, they don't understand the usefulness of the solution. So we need to highlight or work more in how to include these people from the very beginning into the process. That's one of my main points. The second one is that I love to talk about knowledge-based solutions, Carlos mentioned before, because in our country, well, we are accounting about 82 different cultures, and I think that the real solution is based really there. So the merge between science and this local indigenous knowledge will benefit all, especially at the Amazonian region in Colombia, the Andean region, the high mountains, especially Paramos, and where the water is produced. We have several people that they really know how to restore and how to work with nature, so we need to block this better. And the third point, the second is knowledge-based solutions, we need to work more, and the third point is that we need to highlight the role of nature in healing process in our country. As you may know, we are running the peace process that was signed several years ago. And into the peace process, it's recognized the role of nature and the role of restoring nature at the same time that we are restoring victims and the process of damage in Colombia. At this moment, so many people are working with restoration in the lands or in the locations where the war was really complicated. So I think that we have a big opportunity to put MBAs, these solutions, merge with another kind of healings or solutions with more related with the social and economical context.
I'm gonna share a thought here for the debate later. I think time is not playing in our favor. The implementations usually take a lot of time. Investors want things that can produce outcomes immediately. Politicians during their term. Scientists, implementations that they can get data from and publish quickly. You can't wait 10 years in order to see some results. And in a fast-moving world, ecological investments, restoration, implementations, they are long-term investments. It takes time to see the results. the community, sometimes they don't see the results out there, right there, after the implementation has been done, because it takes time for that to develop. And talking about time, I would like to ask Maria, climate change obviously is producing lots of changes. Shifting species distributions, it's one of the consequences of climate change. But not just that, also species are changing their phenology, their behavior, species interactions are changing, even fitness of species. So how should restoration planning account for this uncertainty? What trees do you plant now, knowing that the conditions for the habitat are changing?
Excellent question, and one that it's in everyone's mind. I think we need to get away from the talk of returning to some kind of historical baseline and focus on function. So what is it that we want these restored forests to provide for us in terms of function, carbon, water, livelihoods? And we can do that using the tools of science. So we can, for instance, use species distribution models to predict, what is the range of potential climate that particular species can withstand, and not use just one scenario, but use multiple scenarios so that we can truly have some uncertainty on what may happen. We need to also look for, think about assisted migration as a way to achieve this, and look for trees that or populations that exist in climates that are going to be present in the future at the restored location. And this is, I think, somewhere where the botanical gardens can play a very important role. The same thing with seed provenance. Can we get seeds from locations that are hotter or drier, or whatever climate is expected at their restored location, and really think about that. The other issue is that we need to plan for disturbance. One of our speakers spoke about this, and a paper just came out today showing that for the United States as a whole, the rate of change from natural disturbance is surpassing the rate of change from land use change in terms of land use change. So how do we plan for disturbance? It's really hard, right? But can we get species that are better withstand fire, wind, drought? And at the same time, that requires some kind of landscape level planning. How do we create landscapes that are resistant to fires with fire breaks? And also we need to think about refugia of some sort. Where do we keep species in areas that perhaps in the landscape are not as prone drought? And then as a final point, I think we need to consider adaptive management, that perhaps this is not a one-time restoration effort, but that as some tree species don't work, or some approach doesn't work, we need to go back and redo it. And this, of course, always requires engaging with the communities that depend on these restored forests, so that they provide the much needed input to do this successfully.
Yeah, thank you. Some of these efforts, I think, would necessarily imply bridging science, policy, practice, and all the actors along the way. This morning we were seeing at the end of Dr. Carlos Nauber's presentation the proposed plans for the arcs of restoration in the Amazon and along the Andes. Those are huge efforts that could only be made with strong partnerships across multiple sectors. So, Susan, the Nature Conservancy works with governments, companies, and local communities. And you've been involved in those collaborations. What lessons have you learned about aligning such diverse actors around restoration goals?
Right, yes, so one of the things I love about working at the Nature Conservancy, which is one of the world's largest environmental organizations, I think we're in like over 80 different countries around the world, is that it really I have two main messages. The first, it's about relationships and connections. And I'm a scientist. I spend a lot of time talking to scientists, but there are people at the Nature Conservancy that are the policy experts, the communications experts, the experts at working directly with the local communities. They already know who to talk to and how to present that message. And so it's a great sort of conduit to get the science into the hands of those that can actually use it to make decisions. The second point that I wanted to make was that the great thing about natural climate solutions is, yes, they provide climate mitigation, but they often come with a lot of other benefits like clean air, clean water, habitat for biodiversity, creation of jobs. And so it's really about leading often with the message that is most likely to resonate with your audience. So a policymaker might care more about job creation. A corporate audience might care more about carbon capture because they're trying to achieve their net zero goals. A local community might care more about how it would improve their livelihoods. And so natural climate solutions allow you to bring those diverse benefits to those different audiences.
Thank you, Suzanne. We saw this morning the map of indigenous communities covering the Amazon. You were mentioning that in Colombia there's over 80 local communities, and definitely communities, local communities are important to take into consideration for implementations of ecological restoration. I want to ask now, Alicia, if you have any examples where CAF has successfully aligned climate finance with local community priorities, because they should be aligned, ensuring both ecological and social resilience.
Thank you. Well, we have several examples that we are implementing now. We will see the results, I hope, shortly, but I would like to mention one project in Colombia that has to do with the clam which is called la piangua. There are women in Colombia, Ecuador, Costa Rica, and Mexico. These women gather the clam in the mangroves. So we have created a network to make possible that we provide the resources for these women in order to really, they have the tools, basic tools for gathering this clam, and at the same time they protect the mangrove. Of course, this is very important in terms of absorbing the CO2 emissions. They protect the mangroves, which are crucial for us barriers, natural barriers. They protect the community because they bring the economic resources for the community. And the most gratifying thing is that we are working in this network, not only in Colombia, but in different countries. And we have seen that these women are coming from very different countries, but the experience is very similar. So we are talking with them. We are trying to understand what are the problems in the value chain of this clam, to give it value, because it is very valuable in the market, but not for them. So we are building one project also with the Global Fund for Biodiversity. $16 million that we are bringing to Colombia, and we are the implementing agency. So I think that this is very successful because we have been able to really understand that by supporting these women, we are supporting the community, and we are protecting the mangroves, and we are fighting against climate change. I think this is a very interesting experience, and we hope will be very successful. I would like to mention briefly another one we have in the Patagonia, in Chile, the Chilean Patagonia. We are developing one project in biodiversity credits. These are new instruments. It's not like carbon credits, but these certificates try to give value to the protection and conservation that goes beyond the mandatory one. So we are working in one natural park in the Patagonia to really make the community protect the environment. There are many salmon companies there, so they want to protect their community against the salmon industry. So this is in the Pitipalena Natural Park in Patagonia. And we are having a lot of conversations with the community. They say that, why do you think the biodiversity is useful? Because I don't have perhaps the basic services I need, so don't talk me about biodiversity. So we try to understand how to really make this link between the needs that they really share, the electricity, water, education, by letting them understand that the biodiversity has a value for them. How can we make this possible? This is a very innovative experience, the biodiversity credits. We think that this is something that will be more successful in the future. So I hope that we will be able to bring the results maybe here.
Wonderful, thank you. Wilson, the Humboldt Institute has pioneered the concept of nature-based solutions in the tropics. What do you see as the most transferable lessons from Colombia to other countries?
Well, thank you, Mauricio. Three main points from our experience. First, that we still don't know if a solution solves anything. I mean, we don't have really strong monitoring process of what we are doing. And we are investing a lot of money in our country, in other countries, and so many times we have very few results to show and to demonstrate that with science and with data that the solution really solves the problem that initially were considered. So we developed the Otus network, that is an initiative from the Humboldt Institute, and includes the private and the public sector trying to monitor or to make a monitoring process of biodiversity, flora and fauna into rural lands and urban lands. What we are trying to do is to understand the differences between damaged areas and restored areas and, of course, preserved areas. This big Otus network, we are expecting to grow even more, but we are trying to cover thousands of hectares in the Andean region in Colombia and the Orinoco region as well. So this is a really interesting initiative. We are trying to tackle this problem of don't have the monitoring process. And the second idea is we need to train people. The capacity building, I think, not only for us, we are the convinced ones. I think that we need to convince and train so many people that they don't like a lot or they don't understand a lot the role of nature into this whole context. So we're working really hard from the children, young people, and especially with some of the decision makers in our cities, especially in the intermediate cities, that it's about 500,000 people in Colombia, that it's the cities that are growing really fast in our country. So we need to explain them and to do this capacity building process. And we need to highlight the effectiveness. This is the third idea. The nature-based solutions are really effective. So with monitoring and, of course, considering social and economical indicators, we need to show the effectiveness of these NBS. We are working at this moment, Humboldt Institute from Cali at the COP was named the Latin American hub for the CBD, for the target 2, that is the target related with restoration. So we have a big responsibility for the whole Latin American countries. And we found that every country shares more or less the same concerns. That is, how can I measure this? How can I say to others that these solutions really matters? So we need to consider a bigger project, maybe landscape projects, and I think the Andean region could be really key in this case. So we are beginning to work with Ecuador and Peru, trying to connect the whole Andean ecosystem, especially paramos and the Andean forest, and measuring the restoration initiatives that these countries already have.
Thank you. So as part of the Nurturing Nature initiative, supported by the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, together with Botanic Gardens Conservation International, and a group that we assembled called the CRAC Group, Climate Resilience Advisory Group, with 10 world experts, we are creating an action plan to activate botanical gardens and scale plant-based solutions worldwide. During Dr. Carlos Nober presentation, he was mentioning it would be great that institutions such as the New York Botanical Garden could help restoring the Amazon forest. Exactly that's what we want to achieve, but bringing a global network of botanical gardens. So question for all of you, for whoever, by the way, 2 of the panelists are part of the CRAC group of the Climate Resilience Advisory Group, Wilson and Maria, and we have Miguel Calmon from Conservation International sitting in the audience, who's also another member of the Climate Resilience Advisory Group. So the question for you all is, in what ways can botanical gardens help bridge science, policy, and public awareness to support plant-based solutions and contribute to implement ecological restoration? Wilson?
Great. 2 points that are related with I have mentioned before. I think that botanical gardens are, or they have a key role in training programs, especially for citizen science in, for instance, monitoring process. Not only for urban people and for rural people as well. Just one example. From Colombia, we faced in the past government a big challenge of restoring with 180 million trees, and 12 botanical gardens in our country was like the hubs of training and producing the seedlings and plants and of this big process of restoration in Colombia. Again, we don't have the monitoring data after this process, but I think that it puts the role of those gardens into a key role. And the second one, and we was discussing this with Mauricio, I think that the expertise is from the gardens, especially from what to do, where to do, with whom, and plants that, of course, do not damage the ecosystems. We're facing in Colombia so many invasive plants introduced by mistake in our country. So I think that we need to put knowledge and science into this big process. So I think that training in these 2 topics could be really interesting.
Maria?
Yeah, so I think we sort of need to get away from this linear science to practice thinking. I think it's much more of an iterative processes, both for people that work at universities like me, people that work at organizations like the NYBG, in the sense that I think if we want to restore a particular piece of land, we need to work together with whoever is going to be in that land to define what are the goals of restoration, what are we trying to do here. That's very, very important, because otherwise there's no commitment from the local. And also there's a lot to be learned from the people that live in a particular region. It's also important that we translate the science, and I've seen efforts where somebody will bring a map of a species distribution model or something that makes no sense to the person that they're talking to, right? So how do we translate these models, these remote sensing tools, all these great things that we have to the person that is on the ground, right? And botanical gardens, I think, can serve as great locations for capacity building, as Wilson said, but not just as a sort of people come and we teach them, but as a driver of going outside of the garden and learning in the particular regions, what is it that is successful that people are doing elsewhere, and how can we help in the areas, for instance, provenance, population, species that they may not be thinking about, right? That's very, very important. And then, there needs to be an alignment of, oftentimes as people that are interested in conservation, we think about species that are rare, right? But that's not necessarily the goal of somebody who has a piece of land. So how can we align the incentives for the community with the willingness to conserve biodiversity? So how do we align those incentives and the governance of the land? So I think all of those things would be points in which botanical gardens like the MYBG can really assist. But it needs to be an iterative process.
Susan?
So just to build on those great points already, one of the types of actions that I'm most excited about is agroforestry, which is the incorporation of trees into agricultural landscapes. The trees can sometimes be the crop themselves. They can help provide additional nutrients to the soil or other protective functions. And I think it could be a win-win-win type of solution where you get additional climate mitigation, you boost the biodiversity value of that agricultural landscape, and you can improve the livelihoods of the farmers in those places. And we've spent years now scouring the carbon literature, it's another story I can tell you later, to try to get good carbon numbers for agroforestry. But as we did that, we noted the species that people were using, and it was over 1,400 different species, up to like 30 or 40 in a single farm. And our systems are not set up to have 1,400 species that we can disseminate around the world. So that's where something like a botanical garden, to Wilson's point, of being able to identify the species, to collect the seeds, to propagate them, to get them back out, to teach people how to grow them and care for them, is where a botanical garden could be incredibly useful.
Wonderful. Alicia?
Thank you. I'm quoting you now because I remember you said that the botanical gardens are windows through the ones the cities could look at the ecosystem. So for us, this is very important because we are now in CAF working with an ecosystem approach. We have identified 14 strategic ecosystems in the region. And what we are trying to present is the possibility that the financial institutions work not only country by country, but with an ecosystem approach. And I think that the botanical gardens play a crucial role on that. That's why we are really happy with this agreement we have made with you and the technical cooperation, because then we will be able to really connect the botanical gardens with the ecosystem, the needs of their country, the needs of the cities in the biodiversity program we have. Again, I think that the link between science, political decision, technology are crucial. And I think that this idea of research and knowledge with a purpose is very important for us. Why do we want to have this knowledge? Is this useful for the people? We need to really make this link. We think that innovation is crucial, and to bring the private sector to these tables is also crucial. They need to understand that these are risky projects, but with a lot of potential. So let's work in very specific areas as agroforestry or blue economy, where we are also working. We need to be very focused and try to identify those areas where private investors and public institutions could be ready to really put the money, but we need the knowledge. So I think that a network of botanical gardens, the wisdom of botanical gardens are crucial for our credibility. And I think this is something that we will see will increase the relevance in the coming years.
Back to Wilson.
Just to highlight a brief point about data and information. I think that botanical gardens in so many countries could be the guardians of data and information related with nature-based solutions. In our country, of course, we have the National Information in Biodiversity. It's a big hub of information of biodiversity. But I think that in other countries, they cannot find the final place to put all the data and the information of these projects. And I think that one of the weak points of this process is that you never find the previous data about projects that have been implemented. So I think data could be key, and we didn't mention before.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with all of what you said. I think there's something magical of botanical gardens of being power of place. Botanical gardens are in the cities. So we have a public face. We have strong science. Just above this auditorium, we have the second largest herbarium in the world, 8 million specimens full of data that help us understanding how the diversity of plants worldwide, how that's been changing. There's lots of information just here. And in the back, we have the world's largest botanical library. So, and in front, we have a laboratory when we carry out science at all levels, from molecules to ecosystems. And one of our researchers now is developing a system to map invasive species, to eventually learning how to stop new invasions. So there you go, that's a link to what you were mentioning about the invasive species. And we have expertise to taxonomically identify the species, but also we work with the communities in places as remote as Vanuatu, Ethiopia, Kenya, or the indigenous communities in Mexico, Peru, Brazil, or Colombia. So it's really, botanical gardens are really powerful institutions to plug into this collaborative effort. Thinking about scaling up with hope and action, I want to ask Maria, know-how is the key. You are a renowned researcher, but also a renowned educator. As an educator and scientist, what role does training the next generation play scaling plant-based solutions?
Thank you for that question. As I look left and I see a bunch of our students sitting in the audience, and this semester I'm having it's a lot of fun. I'm teaching a seminar about the Amazon, all kinds of things about the Amazon. Its people, its climate, its biology, it's how we can keep it, like our speaker said. So I think for me, nature, to go to your point when we're talking about, which is plant-based solutions, nature-based solutions, they sit at the intersection of ecology, agronomy, really, climate science, and social sciences. And most of our universities are not designed in this way. And I think a lot of faculty, including myself, are saying, we're just going to teach what we think the students need to know. But it's really, really important that we get away from the very focused disciplinary thinking to this multidisciplinary thinking where students learn from different fields, different perspectives, economics, conservation, agronomy. We have a tremendous amount of learning to do from all the research that has been done on agronomy. We also need to embed in the students this notion of problem solving, of experimentation, that science really is about experimentation. This is what we do. We try things out, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work. But that is embedded in discovery, it's embedded in restoration, it's embedded in plant-based solutions. I think we also need to think about the ethics of what we do. How does restoration benefit, or any action benefit the community? Who does it benefit more broadly? Particularly, we come from institutions as privileged as the institutions in which we sit. And then I think we need to also, some of our students more and more are engaging in capacity building, not just for themselves, but for the people that they work with, so that those folks that are working with them in conservation projects, restoration projects, learn from them, and it's a two-way process. And another thing that we're trying to do is to create connections to universities and centers of learning outside of the United States so that we can learn from them and we can also serve them as training in areas that they may not have the expertise. So I think education has a tremendous role to play in this effort.
Thank you. And in fact, we have a partnership with Columbia University. Botanical gardens have strong education at all levels. Jamie, correctly, if I am wrong, we deliver classes for over 400,000 people last year. That's absolutely astonishing. And we educate people from all ages. From science, we have a strong graduate studies program. We partner with 8 universities, 6 in the New York area, 1 in Florida, and 1 in Europe. And we've been training Ph.D. students since 1897, many of which were international or are international students and have occupied leadership roles everywhere. So that's also quite important to highlight. We are obviously in the middle of the climate week, and carbon sequestration is a key topic, Susan, but when we talk about plant-based solutions, plants provide way more than just carbon sequestration benefits. They also support biodiversity, water resources, livelihoods, and other co-benefits. How can we ensure these multiple environmental services are highlighted in the climate agenda while still emphasizing the importance of climate mitigation efforts?
Right, yes, so I am actually secretly a biodiversity person at heart, even though I spend like 90% of my time saying carbon, 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 carbon. But the nice thing about carbon is it is much easier to measure, and so I think and climate change is a ongoing crisis that is getting increasingly real every day. So it makes sense that people would focus on carbon, but we are also facing a biodiversity crisis. And there has been a lot of research showing that these two are interlinked. And just to give you an example of a paper that we had that came out recently, showed that because of the loss of seed dispersers, so in the tropics, about 81% of trees are dispersed by birds, mammals, picking up the seeds, flying somewhere else and getting rid of the seed and starting a new forest. And we're losing those seed dispersers. And that loss is actually now showing up in large-scale carbon records. In places where we've lost our seed dispersers, we get about 1/4 of the natural regrowth that you would get if they were fully intact. So that's suggesting that the biodiversity crisis is also exacerbating the climate crisis. And we definitely know that climate is harming biodiversity. So we have to think about the two in tandem from the beginning. How do we design projects that can jointly meet climate and biodiversity goals? And this is true for any other goal too. So if you want to do a livelihood project as well, you need to have that at the front and center in the project design all the way through implementation and then monitoring afterwards, to Wilson's good point of, are we actually achieving what we set out to achieve?
Thank you, Susan. And now I have a question for Alicia regarding international partnerships. CAF works everywhere in Latin America and the Caribbean, and it's incredibly active development bank right now in terms of environmental action. What role do international partnerships play in scaling these solutions across the region? What's been your experience? Are there other development banks playing a similar role? What's been your experience in CAF?
We were in Cali in the biodiversity COP. It was really amazing to see. I think that was the COP, the biodiversity COP, with more institutions, people and private sector companies that attended a conference like this. We saw a big change, but now we need to materialize that. We see now that the geopolitical situation is a little bit confusing in terms of where to put the priorities. Of course, climate change is not in many of the institutions' agendas right now, but biodiversity is important, perhaps from the point of view of the agroforestry or the use of natural resources for economic purposes. So I think we need to really make this change in the way we present the problem and the question. And one thing that the multilateral development banks can do is to provide the right economic incentives. I think this is important. And in our case, for instance, when we have credits related to green projects, of course, including biodiversity, the countries pay less. The credits are cheaper. And I think this is very important to give the right signals that this is good. We are prioritizing that. And I think that we have been very successful in making that the ministers of environment now are more linked to the fiscal discussions at national level, because with the green bonds or the debt for nature swaps, we are bringing these biodiversity interests into the economic decisions in the countries. So the conference that took place in Seville in July, this was the International Conference for Financing for Development. The environmental questions had a strong role there. And I think that the institutions, we all are aware that this is important to link finance for development and finance for the conservation and protection of the environment. Perhaps climate change is a little bit sometimes, in our case it's not the case. The CAF, the Development Bank of Latin America and the Caribbean, wants to be the green bank of the region, and we believe that climate change and biodiversity are very important in our agenda. But I think that in any case, all the international institutions recognize that deforestation is a big problem, that we need to take care of the nature, the conservation, the ocean, and of course always involving the local communities. So I see a movement in the international discussions, perhaps not as fast as it should be, but I think that we see that the biodiversity is taking a different place. And I wanted to mention, it's funny that you had your students there, no? I don't have any students here, no. But it's funny that now it's important that before when I was studying is economics, biology, science, engineering. But now there are many cross-cutting material. So I think it is very important that young people really are not educated in silos, but they understand that the economics has to do very much with forest, the engineering has to do very much with philosophy. I think this is great, and I think this changed the way that the future people who will be governing our countries will have this in mind, that there are no silos, that the nature is part of the economy, as it was with Adam Smith or Stuart Mill. So I think we need to really change the way we look at the economic problems.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we are in a world in which all these efforts need to be inter and multidisciplinary. I can recognize that, for instance, when I went to school, it was mainly silos education. We didn't know about the importance of understanding what was going on in the political environment. We thought, oh, well, politics, they do their thing. We from science, we do our thing. And we don't need to learn how that is done. And you were mentioning the importance of talking to ministers, and I was remembering that Wilson actually served as an advisor for the Ministry of Environment in Colombia. Restoration is a difficult topic, and it's often framed as a long term, and that's not very welcome for political agendas. So Wilson, how did you and do you communicate its urgency to decision makers who work on short political or funding cycles.
He's my friend now. It's really complicated. I've been working with restoration from the past 20 years, and I think that the hardest part of this is to convince that restoration is working and it produces final results. It is really complicated. People never understand that nature needs time. But we have 2 or 3 opportunities. One is the regeneration of nature. You were mentioning this before, and you were mentioning as well. In Colombia, we're measuring from the Humboldt Institute about 3 million hectares of forest that is on successional process, especially in the lowland of Andean region. And I think that this is a really cost-effective strategy for convince people in restoration. I've seen restoration process that in 2 or 3 years shows some kind of process. Christian, I think that you know that. And at the tropics and the lowlands, in 2 or 3 years, you have some results. I mean, it's not a perfect result, but you have some results. The second point is that we need to change paradigm around the cost of restoration instead of the benefits of doing restoration. It is so normal for me that typical phone call where someone calls and asks, hey, how does it cost to restore an hectare, you know? And I always try to to say, well, what if you account the benefits of restoring this, not only the cost, you know? Because in Colombia, so many times restoration, it's an obligation. So I think that we have a big opportunity to put the economic and social benefits of restoration instead of the cost of it. So I think that especially for climate change, we need to show or highlight the benefits in the short and medium and long term of restoring, for instance, a watershed, a paramo in the high mountain, or even a mangrove. You can save people, you can save biodiversity, you can save so many things that the decision maker never understands. Just one short story. I had to attend with the environmental minister at that moment one hurricane, with a strength of 5 in a small island in Colombia. And only 5 houses of the whole island survived. The 5 houses that was behind the mangrove. So at this moment, everyone at the island is planting red mangrove because it saves them, and because tomorrow, in 1 year, 2 or 10 years, that hurricanes will come again. So I think that we need to convince, not with a hurricane, of course, but I think that we need to convince people that it is useful, that the solutions really solves problem.
Thank you. Now in the next 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I will open the opportunity for you to ask questions to the panelists. So if you want to, you can use your phone, scan that QR code, and type your questions, and I will be seeing the questions here in my phone. And while you do that, I will just ask one more question to all the panelists while people think about their questions. So looking ahead, what role do you think technology such as artificial intelligence, drones, or satellite monitoring can and should play in scaling plant-based solutions?
I have a fun example that we're just starting to explore now. So we work on what's called the reforestation pipeline, which is the pipeline from getting the seeds, growing them up in the nursery, having people to put them in the ground, and then take care of them afterwards. And that pipeline has pinch points. It's not flowing at the scale that we need it to get reforestation really going. And there's not enough people to monitor, there's not enough people to plant, there's not enough nursery capacity to grow the seedlings, and there's not enough seeds. So seed scarcity is at the very base of that pipeline. And I was just talking to our reforestation lead for North America, and he's like, we're trying to collect pine cones to restore native pine forest in the southeast of US. And how we currently do it is somebody's in a truck driving down the road, looking out their window, trying to find pine cones that they can go and collect to get enough seeds. And that takes a long time, and you can't access a lot of the forest. So what they're exploring is a combination of drones and AI that you can go through, like fly the little drone around, and it will alert you when there are pine cones that you could go collect, and then you can target it and collect it more quickly.
That's very cool. Any ideas? Any thoughts?
I will talk about one use of technology that I think is really important for biodiversity. So we're seeing, sort of an explosion on the way to remotely monitor biodiversity. So making those a part of restoration efforts, whether it's, acoustic monitoring, visual monitoring, the technology to use that kind of data and to analyze it and to provide it, because oftentimes, particularly in the private sector, they have not only carbon sequestration goals, but also biodiversity goals, and they are looking for metrics. And this is the kind of technology that can provide those kinds of metrics. So I'm super excited about this. We're starting a new degree center only about this, and then how to actually connect with the private sector to make this possible, to translate this data that is so hard to get under using traditional field methods, but I think the technology is opening new ground.
We think that the future of the Latin American and Caribbean region has to do with technology based on biodiversity. Perhaps it's a too ambitious thought, but I think that the region with 60% of the biodiversity has to make a good use of that. Perhaps leaving behind the extractivist model or changing a little bit the way the countries grow. And then technology requires that the private sector really understand and know the data. I think it's very important we are able to really give the right indicators to make sure that the investment is in the right place. So we need to work much more in the institutions with data gathering and with institutions, but I think that the technology based in biodiversity and the green industry using biodiversity as a source is crucial. I like to say that artificial intelligence is crucial, is great, but natural intelligence is even better. So let's mix both of them, artificial and natural intelligence, and work together. So we need to really make sure that the investments go in the right direction, but of course we need all the tools, capacity building, data. This is something that perhaps takes time.
Wilson?
A short one. Just imagine thousands of people reporting data about or around monitoring process, and you are trying to process this alone. It is almost impossible. So in our case, with this Otus network, we are really concerned about the successful of this network and what are we going to do with all this bunch of data that we are going to receive. So I think that the artificial intelligence could help us to run this. And I want to highlight something, Mauricio, that one of the main concerns of the WEF assessment from the World Economic Forum in the next 2 years is misinformation. So I think that we need to have really good data to establish communication and to establish better discussion with policymakers and, well, everyone. So I think that artificial intelligence in so many cases will help us to have better data and to have better analysis to give to the decision makers.
Thank you. So I want to share something. I'm very happy to say that this system here works very well. Right now I have 45 questions and coming. So I think I'll try to consolidate some of the question 46 and some actually very interesting and long. I will be happy to share those questions with you. So obviously we have about 10 minutes for this session. That would be like 10-15 seconds per of answer. Now I can see several questions about fungi. We haven't talked about fungi, the importance of fungi in ecological restoration to support the mycorrhizae. Can you share if we should include fungi or we should keep talking about just plant-based solutions?
Just a short one, because I'm really excited in this topic. Fungi in Colombia are really diverse. Maybe we are one of the most diverse fungi in the world. And well, I made my PhD. It's just another short story, but I made it's short, Maurice. Trying to recover soil. And it's really complicated. So plant-based solutions is not only about trees. It's about trying to put all the biodiversity, not only timber, into the process of restoration. And I think that fungi plays a really key role into the soil restoration. In our country, almost 40% of the soil is degraded. So we need to restore or repair soil. And it is not only with trees. We need to use every toolbox that we could have, and fungi are key for soil restoration in our country.
Any other inputs? All right, so I just received 52 now. I just received a question for you, Susan. Can you please expand on agroforestry, the importance of agroforestry, how you do it? Is there any way of doing it wrongly?
Oh, so, okay, agroforestry, the reason I'm excited about it is I work on all the different ways you could put trees back into the landscape. So you could let the forest regrow naturally. You could set up a plantation, or you could do like a large ecological planting. But a lot of the spaces where we might potentially want to put trees back are already used for agriculture, and we have a growing population to feed. So it's really about how do we better integrate trees into our agricultural landscapes so that it can maintain yields. Sometimes trees will compete with the crops that you want, but if they're well designed, they can actually boost productivity. So for example, my colleagues that work in Colombia, when you put trees in grazing lands, they say they can see almost immediate increases in milk production because the cows are not out there baking in the sun. And there's so many, the reason I've spent years scouring thousands of papers for agroforestry carbon data is there's so many different flavors of agroforestry. I mean, these are practices that have been around for thousands of years, used by indigenous communities and still used today, to ones that are designed to have like rows of trees that you can drive your combine through in a more sort of mechanized industrial type system. So I don't think there's not a wrong way to do it. It's really about finding the right fit for your specific context and needs.
Great. I'm gonna go to perhaps trying to merge questions, one for Maria and then for Alicia. Maria, several questions suggest how can citizen scientists be part of this, or if there's a a role in storytelling as well to increase outreach and let people know why this is important. Do you have any experience on that?
Thank you for that question. That's a very important question. So I think there's a tremendous role for citizen scientists. I mean, I think many people in this audience probably at some point, even inadvertently, even if you are not a professional ecologist, have tried to plant something with mixed success. I think there's a couple of platforms and we can share them. There's one called Restore, where you can upload efforts. And I think people that are trying to do any kind of restoration of any kind of tree anywhere can upload information to this website. And I think we need to upload, I want to make one very important point. We need to upload not just our successes, but our failures. Because the failures are important and the scientific literature is biased towards success. And for something like restoration, it's very, very crucial that we know how was it done, what species it was, when it was planted, and why it worked or didn't work. So anyone who has a story about this, I encourage you to go to this website. It's called Restore, R-E-S-T-O-R, and provide this information, probably bilingual if you can, which you can do through ChatGPT and all kinds of tools now, and share what you have. And this is the way that we can create something that is truly, that scales up our individual knowledge to something that can be used in a much broader context.
Thank you, Maria. Alicia, several questions are about the role cities play. Is it worth investing in urban spaces, restoring cities? What could be the impact of investing in an urban infrastructure here in New York? Does it have can that have a global impact? What about other cities? So perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about what CAF is doing with cities.
Thank you for the question. Well, Wilson has already mentioned one program we have, which is called Biodiversities. So what we are trying to do is, and we work with the Humboldt Institute on that, is to integrate biodiversity in all our projects. Some cities are part of this network, but in any case, even for the cities that are not part of the network, we work in urban development projects that really take into account the green infrastructures, natural infrastructures. We are very active in urban development projects. We have made a commitment to work at subnational level. CAF is one of the multilateral development banks that can work with cities and regions without sovereign guarantee. This implies that we have the possibility to talk very directly with the cities. We are now having, and you know that, one project with Santa Marta, for instance, in Colombia, where we are planning to restore the botanical garden. So I think that it's important that we make that mainstream in biodiversity in all our projects, but particularly in the urban projects. And I think that we are quite successful. Also in Brazil, we have made several projects putting a lot of emphasis on public green spaces and botanic gardens. And these projects have been subsidized with a better interest rate because they are 100% green. So I think that we can make a real change with that, and we need to work very much at local level, and we are doing that. Still many cities and many places where we can work, but I think that the change is impressive, and many cities are requesting that we work in botanic gardens in their spaces. I think it's very important.
Thank you. And Wilson, do you want to add a little bit more there?
Just to add a small thing, that we are the knowledge partner with CAF in this biodiversity process. And we've been working with several cities in Latin America, and it's amazing how you find different levels of readiness for the cities to include the biodiversity into the planning process. So we can move from a city a small city in Argentina. This is a real story. They don't understand what is biodiversity, no? Or you can move to Guayaquil in Ecuador, where they have prepared 10 corridors and they are ready to decide which of these corridors is better or not to be implemented. So I think that in Latin America, I think in general, we need to understand which kind of information do they have, how they perceive the biodiversity into the city, what they have done, and especially which is the main objective to follow for the 2 or 10 next years. That will be interesting. Our main point is that biodiversity is not only a green point into the city, no, because so many people are trying to understand, oh, yeah, okay, this is the green point here, it's okay. No, it's key, the role of biodiversity, and I think that is key that we need to develop. So some indicators for a major that need to show results in 4 years. So I began with this, for instance, in Santa Marta. After 4 years, what do we have? With strong indicators, not only complicated indicators, but strong indicators. Thank you.
Yes, and we are very happy to share that we are going to work together in Santa Marta, bringing the expertise of our urban conservation strategy and the work that we've been doing here at the New Botanical Garden with the Bronx River Restoration Project, trying to replicate something similar in the main river in Santa Marta and working in partnership with the Botanical Garden. So thank you for that. And I'm going to close with one question that's been asked several times. And this is for all of you, please, very short answers. What is one concrete action someone in this audience can take starting today to advance plant-based solutions for climate resilience?
Can I give 4 very fast ones? So first, calculate your carbon footprint. If you haven't already, there's tools online that help you to do that. But remember, the idea of the carbon footprint was actually created by oil companies to put the blame back on the individuals. And in fact, our individual choices are only responsible for like 40% of our emissions. The rest is comes from how our systems are built. So how do we enact systems level change? Talk about climate change. Surveys show that majority of people are worried about climate change, but the majority of people also don't talk about it. So we just need to have it top of mind in the conversation. The second big systems level change that you can do is to vote. Vote for candidates that at all levels, local, state, federal, that are going to keep climate change top of mind. But that said, obviously, we want control over our own individual actions and what we can do. And I'll just say what I personally did was just make a list of like, these are all the things that are in my own power to affect change. And, got young kids, busy job. And so it's just picking one at a time. Doesn't matter what, just go down and make that change until it becomes sort of part of your life, and then pick the next one and make the next change.
Wonderful, thank you, Susan. Maria?
Get involved locally. So if you live in New York, there are many opportunities to work with New York City parks. Take your children so that they learn the importance of nature, and plant a tree or two, hopefully with them.
Wilson?
I agree, but I think that the best solution is to conserve, not try to restore. So try to identify the best places to support the conservation or preservation process that are running into the city or around the city. So it is cheaper than trying to restore areas.
Thank you.
I would say look at your consumption behavior, consume products with certifiable environmental traceability, and perhaps also consume a little bit less. Austerity, I think, is a good advice for the planet.
Thank you. And I would add also, we need to support institutions that are committed to help, such as this institution and these institutions. So thank you, everybody, the audience, and the panelists to join us for this 4th annual Thomas E. Lovejoy and Edward O. Wilson panel, Rooted in Resilience, Harnessing Nature for Climate Solutions. A deep, deep thank you to our distinguished panelists. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and insights on how we can halt biodiversity loss and build climate resilience through restoration and conservation. We hope this discussion has inspired new ideas and actions to apply science and nature-based solutions in ways that create positive impacts that span local to global scales. As we conclude, I want to invite everyone here to continue exploring and enjoying the garden. The New York Botanical Garden Farmers Market is open now through 3 p.m. just outside the Ross Hall. So as you exit the Ross Hall, if you turn left, you will see as you go down to the Mosholu Gate, the farmers market on your left. The markets offer locally grown produce, fresh baked goods, and food trucks. Also from now through 3 p.m., stop by the meet and greet tables at Tulip Tree Alley to connect with nature advocacy organizations and New York Botanical Garden staff. You can learn more about the Bronx Green Up program, the Urban Conservation Team's Welikia project, the New York City Bird Alliance, the Big Reuse Initiative, and even participate in our multi-sensory plant experience. Additionally, the Science Open House will be open from 12:30 to 3 p.m. in the Mertz Library and in the Steer Herbarium, where you can explore our collections and see behind-the-scenes highlights that support research and conservation efforts. Thank you again for your participation and engagement, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the day here at the garden. Thank you so much.